Rudy Giuliani is going on a fishing trip, as in an information gathering mission in Ukraine. The president's personal attorney openly admits he is going in hopes of pushing an investigation of matters related to Joe Biden's son. He also wants to ask questions about why Ukraine released negative information about Paul Manafort during the 2016 presidential election. If any of this sounds familiar, Giuliani insists he is not meddling in the 2020 election cycle because that is a year and a half off. House Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff, though, he's not buying it.
All Americans should think this is improper. Do we really want to take the country down this path again of getting a foreign government involved in our presidential politics? And it seems to me that what Giuliani is saying and what others, Brad Parscale and others in the Trump campaign are saying is we're going to do everything short of what's downright criminal. Ethics don't matter anymore. Patriotism doesn't matter anymore. And if that's where we are as a country, then we're in deep trouble.
CNN reporter Michael Warren is with me now. And so I know you talked to Rudy Giuliani this morning, and unlike Chairman Schiff, he sees nothing wrong with this kind of trip.
That's right. Giuliani telling CNN, Brooke, that this trip to Ukraine he's doing as the president's private lawyer, not connected to the campaign or anything. And his effort is to essentially help the president's image in the post-Mueller era that we're living in. And Rudy Giuliani says that he's not, again, representing the campaign. But this is raising a lot of questions, of course, because a part of his reason for going there is to look deeper into this question about whether or not Joe Biden and his son, who was on the board of this Ukrainian company that was under investigation, if there is any sort of connection there, and clearly a lot of Democrats aren't buying it.
So he told you, quote, "I don't want any favors. I just want this investigated." My question is, how do you show up as essentially the president's, spokesperson and that not carry a lot of weight?
You're absolutely right. And of course, this is the way that, a lot of people in Ukraine and of course here in the United States fear that Giuliani's involvement in this story is going to look. That is how he will be perceived as a representative of the president. And of course, we know, Brooke, that Rudy Giuliani speaks with the president, again, as his personal lawyer, pretty frequently. He's in the inner circle. So the optics of this clearly don't look great for Rudy Giuliani, but he appears to be moving forward. There's a question about whether or not he's actually going to have a meeting with the president-elect of Ukraine, who takes office at the beginning of June.
Are there any official meetings, or did he tell you about any of his plans as he's over there?
He's sort of reticent about telling me or anybody else exactly what he's doing. He says that there are no plans currently confirmed to meet with Zelensky. That's the incoming president of Ukraine. But he has been in touch over the last several months with several current and former Ukrainian officials over Skype, and including one meeting he had with the current prosecutor general of Ukraine in New York. It stands to reason that he may try to meet with those folks while he's in Ukraine as well.
Rudy Giuliani told the New York Times, which broke this story, quote, "We're not meddling in an election. We're meddling in an investigation, which we have a right to do." And then he went on to say that there's nothing illegal about this. Sungmin, what's your reaction to that?
I also found what else Rudy Giuliani said in that New York Times interview interesting. Some could say it's improper, and I think that's what most people are looking at right now, particularly with what the what the president went through with the last 2 years of the Mueller investigation. And I'm also really kind of amazed at Rudy Giuliani's continued role in kind of being the president's lead attack dog, even after the conclusion of the Mueller investigation. I mean, we always knew he was technically the attorney, but he was more of kind of this public relations spokesperson to kind of muddy the waters in some respects of how the public felt about the Mueller investigation. It seems like he's kind of doing that again, perhaps going too far. We'll see.
Is this a smart move? I mean, the president's clearly gunning for Joe Biden, right? And Rudy Giuliani says the president supports his efforts in the Ukraine. On Twitter, it appears the president thinks Joe Biden's going to be the one he faces off against. But is this a smart move by Rudy Giuliani?
Well, in a normal world, no. But I just feel like in the world we're living in, I don't know, will he be held accountable by any Republicans? Probably not. I mean, nothing illegal, some would say it improper, is basically the Trump 2020 re-elect campaign slogan, right? So I feel like he's doing something that is obviously a problem, and yet I don't know if it'll matter.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a mystifying move given the messages of the last 2 years. And there's more than one way to skin a cat. Like, if you want Oppo on Joe Biden, go about getting it in America. There's plenty of ways to do that. And they may need it because he's very high in the polls, but this is not the way to do it.
Yeah. Okay, so what is this going to bring is the question, whatever he goes to Ukraine. And our former Homeland Security official and our analyst here at CNN, Juliette Kayyem, pointed this out, quote, "This will be the real test of how to cover whatever Giuliani finds. It is very likely any information will just be made up, stolen, altered. The only story that should come out of this is that the Trump campaign is working with a foreign power again to win the election." But to her point of how you cover whatever comes out of this, I mean, that's the point.
It's a good
Rudy
point.
Giuliani wants you to take the bait.
Right, because the backstory here is that Biden, he had the Ukraine portfolio as vice president, right? Obama had him negotiating with Ukraine. It was very complicated internal politics Biden got involved with. And frankly, he made some enemies in Ukraine. There were certain groups and parties that Biden as vice president supported, others that he didn't. He tried to push people out. It was a whole complicated set of politics he was dealing with there. And now Giuliani is basically going over there, finding the people who didn't like what Biden did as vice president and saying, hey, is there any connection between his son's company and his actions? And lo and behold, some of those politicians might say yes. So first of all, just in terms of American foreign policy, what a terrible thing to do to play parties in Ukraine off of your political opponents in the United States. I mean, that's a whole new world, right? So to Julia's point, and everyone that's looked at this, I've read a lot of pieces about this. I have not seen anyone who finds any credible allegation of a quid pro quo between what Biden did as vice president and what his son was doing on this company.
So it looks like a conflict. It was a bad idea, but it's like stupid things your son does for 500, please, Alec, could be something that President Trump as well would have to answer for.
Well, and if there were there, you don't have to ask a foreign government to investigate it. You can do the job and see what you can find and present it.
And the conflict now is they're going to buy people that Biden doesn't like in the Ukraine.
That's right.
With an incentive to try and attack him. And obviously the Ukrainian government wants a good relationship with the Trump administration, so they're highly incentivized to find some dirt.
But also, the other thing is we've sat and listened to so many people say, oh, it's so crazy to ever think the Trump campaign would ever go and work with another country against the interests of the United States. And here's Rudy Giuliani doing it out in the open.
Yeah, now it's in plain sight.
Yeah.
And to be clear, the positions that Joe Biden had while in charge of the Ukraine portfolio were also the positions shared broadly in government, not spearheaded by him necessarily. It's not as if there is any evidence that he was doing this for some personal issue.
That's correct, but unfortunately, it's creating kind of all this smoke around him by just putting this, putting news of Giuliani putting what he's doing out there, and that's the problem for Joe Biden.
Is there a message here to Joe Biden that President Trump is sending? I mean, he's hitting him he's hitting his children essentially.
Oh, and he will continue to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that is part of the message, and he will continue to talk about his children.
Yeah. I mean, also he's obviously very worried about him. I mean, I think that's another thing we can take away from this. Like, they're not going to go through all. Yeah, he's worried.
Trump's worried about Biden.
Trump's worried about Biden. That you don't go through all this trouble if you're not concerned.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's pretty clear about that.
Yeah.
Maybe this would be bad for Biden later on, but frankly, in the context of a primary, it's good for him to be attacked by the president.